Hello, everybody. We are waiting on our participants to arrive, so we're going to give them another minute or two. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're very excited to have Sebastian from K&K Software here to talk about this topic. So settle in and with your coffee, your tea, whatever it is you need this morning, mid-morning, and we will get started in just a few minutes. For those of you who have been with us before, I apologize for repeating, but you have two options for getting in touch with us, and that is the question and answer area and the chat feature. Please feel free to use either one of those should you have a question you'd like Sebastian to address or a comment that you'd like to have shared. I will be monitoring those throughout the presentation, and we will go to them after Sebastian's gone through his presentation. We'll take all questions and discussion at the end. So I'm going to give everybody another minute or two, and then we will move ahead. So those of you who are attending, could you let me know in the chat where you're from, what companies you're from? Patrick, great. I'm on the West Coast as well, so early morning. Mateo, New City Press out in New York. So we have bi-coastal attendees. That's always good. Okay, I think we're in a good shape to get started. So, Sebastian, welcome everybody to today's ACP webinar on Accelerate Revenue Growth by Eliminating Data Silos. Excuse me. This webinar is sponsored by one of our ACP associate members, K&K Software, who is represented by Sebastian Mayers here today. And we are very excited to have Sebastian with us. We know in our field, data has become a much more important resource for many different parts of the publishing industry. And so better understanding it, feeling more comfortable with it are important, but more so figuring out how to use it effectively to continue to spur growth in our companies is a really foundational question. So Sebastian is here today. I'm going to give him a chance to introduce himself and go into his presentation. As I said, questions or comments can be shared through the question or chat feature, and we will get to questions and comments at the end of the presentation. And I'm done. So, and if you have questions for me, please feel free to let me know. With that said, I'm going to hand it over to Sebastian. It's all yours.
Thank you very much, Therese, and thanks for having me here. As you said, yeah, accelerating revenue growth by eliminating data silos is an interesting topic because I think everybody of us is still facing those problems. And I think, to be honest, we'll continue to face those problems also in the future. It's not something which just goes away by tomorrow. Let me a little bit introduce myself. My name is Sebastian. I'm the CEO of K&K Software. We are, K&K is a group of different companies basically scattered across the world. We're primarily focusing on the media and publishing industry, but I will get to that a little bit later. I'm working for the publishing industry or within the publishing industry for the last 20 years. So I had the joy of working with many different publishers across the world. Trade publishing, special interest, but also publishers within the magazine area. So basically really all across the board. And I'm trying to explain to you today what my findings are throughout in the last 20 years to basically how to tackle data silos and get rid of them, at least try to get rid of them, and how potentially K&K could be helping you accomplish that, but also giving tips and tricks along the side, because it's not necessarily all about software. What we will be seeing today, it's really also about people and making sure everybody understands the importance of data. So getting started, what is actually the problem with the data nowadays? And really the problem with data nowadays is that it's being generated everywhere. So every touch point we have with our customers, every touch point, potentially even our competitors have with our customers, could be a point of a point of contact where we are generating data. And the problem is, if you look at it, so that data is being generated almost everywhere. And just for a little bit of facts and figures here, throughout the last 3 years, 90% of the world's data has been generated, in its entirety. So that's really a lot of data, which, if managed the correct way, could be very helpful to accomplish a whole bunch of things for us. The problem with that the data is generated everywhere is that usually we have all kinds of different systems in place where we are managing the data. That means we're automatically creating data silos by leveraging different software solutions, by having Excel spreadsheets somewhere floating around and those type of things. And that is really what the problem with nowadays data is, that it's the vast amount of data which is out there, the high speed of data being generated, but still it's being deployed into, most of the time at least, into various different data silos. But if we want to look into a little bit more in depth why data silos exist, so we just talked about the sheer amount of data which is out there and accessible, but this screen could be looking familiar to yourself. I just grabbed a little bit of a screenshot there. That's what we usually have to deal with when we talk to our customers. It's lots of different systems, lots of different databases, Excel spreadsheets floating around, and lots of different software packages. And that is one part of why data silos exist. But as I said at the beginning, it's not just always only about technology. Let me try to emphasize on that a little bit more. So those are the 3 different things why, at least what we have encountered so far, why we believe that data silos exist. If we start on the organizational structure, so in most of the companies we're talking to, data is not really a topic which a lot of people can relate to. And Therese, you said this in the intro as well. It's really something which we need to make sure we're making everybody in the company aware of why data is important, and what we can do with it and what we can leverage with that. So a lot of times what we don't see is that there's no data management strategy, not in the management of the company, nor in the different departments of the company. Sometimes the goals and priorities of even different departments are not exactly matching each other, and therefore it's not being emphasized on making sure that data is being stored and managed in a transparent way. And I think we all can look at the last one, bureaucracy and restrictive access. That's always something where we, at least to a certain extent, all have to deal with, right? Oh, can I get access to this analysis report? Can I get access to this software? Or we can't do this because of licensing, or we can't do this because there's some data in it where we are not really sure if we can share this with everybody. So that's definitely something where, from an organizational structure and from an organizational perspective, on why we're the cause of some of the data silos as well. But then next to that is not, if you go one step deeper from the organizational structure, a little bit into more the company culture, into the different departments you're looking at. So you may have departments which are kind of thinking about only into their, like this departmental thinking. So finance people, people from royalties sometimes have that problem, that they are somewhat loosely connected to all the other departments, but not so much integrated in the everyday work life. We sometimes see this from the editorial to the production as well, that those teams are not really connected to each other. And this by itself is causing a problem on working on an everyday basis, but it definitely is causing a problem also from a data perspective. And then, of course, all the politics set aside, that some people just don't want to share data because they think the more I can have under my belt, and the more people have to ask me for certain analysis or for my opinions, then the better it is for me to think about job security for a reason here as well. So those are the things which doesn't have anything to do with technology, and I think those things are very important. And can be not really solved easily, but you can get started on it easily. Whereas the technology aspects, that's something where we also look in a little bit more into detail, is something where you have to also look into your potentially old system, because it's a lot of time when what we see there is this old legacy systems floating around with proprietary technology, which means that a lot of times those systems are not really easily interfaceable. So you can't really extract data in a good way. Sometimes you can't even extract any data whatsoever. Sometimes it's even stored in databases where you don't really have access to all the data in there, but you only have access to it through your front end, for example. And then a lot of times what we see is that people, every time I talk to one of our customers and ask them, are you using Windows machines or Macs? They're pretty certain about what they're using, and they have a very good idea of why they either using Macs or why they either using Windows machines. But if I talk to them about, but what kind of technology platform are you working on, that they look at me and say, I don't know exactly what you're talking about. And then I say, well, there's platforms out there nowadays which are meant to actually store and share data in a centralized way. And there's lots of different software packages which can get access, or which have access to those centralized data platforms, but they're not thinking about it. For example, if you go into the Apple Web Store, right, you just download an app and it's working seamlessly with all the other technology pieces you have on your phone. And the same is possible with business software out there nowadays. I'm just okay, it's just a pop-up from your service, sorry. And then lastly is the nowadays, with all the cloud infrastructure, the cloud software which is offering which is offered throughout the cloud, throughout the internet, the access to new technology is very easy and cheap. That means it's very easy for departments or even individuals within departments to get access to Monday.com or something like that, where you just start organizing yourself, and it slowly grows. So you're not organizing yourself only anymore, but the whole department is potentially putting their schedule or whatnot in various cloud systems out there, because it costs just a couple of bucks per person, and it's easily budgeted. And most of the time you can get up on those systems on your own without large implementations. But the problem with that is, if you don't have the data in mind which you will be putting into those environments, and which will be produced within those environments, that again, it is a data silo created very easily, even with the newest set of technology, talking cloud technology here, on a very frequent basis or very easy basis. So that is something which we all have to keep in mind. One of the quotes I really liked, and this is a book I can really suggest you to read. The good thing about this book is it's not telling you anything about rocket science or something. It's really giving you the fundamentals of working with data, and you don't have to be a technology expert at all. So it's really using easy language. And what I grabbed out from there is, the reality is that most businesses are already data rich, but inside poor. And that's exactly what I said in the beginning. It's not the problem that we don't have the amount of data. And if I go to the next slide here, it makes it very visible. This is an analysis of PwC, and I'm not going. It was more meant to look around for how are different industries being geared up to use AI technology, so artificial intelligence. And for artificial intelligence is the key for artificial intelligence to make it useful and successful is that you need to have lots amounts of data. And this is the portion which looks primarily at the media and publishing business. And if you look at the data availability, it looks like this little mobile phone with a 4.4 number in there. So as you see, 5 is the highest number on those in this analysis here, is that the data is highly available. It's just we're not making good use of it, and that's something which we're trying to tackle out today on what we can do to solve that. So now we talked about why data silos potentially exist, but why are they bad? I mean, is it really so bad to have data scattered across different systems, or what's the deal with it? And I think it's two big problems we have with data silos. It's the inhibited productivity, and it's really bad decision making. And to go a little bit into further detail here, in inhibited productivity, if you look at the first one, like long-lasting data gathering, right? I think we all have been through that. If your budgeting process starts at your company, I don't know how it works exactly at your company, but I can imagine that first thing you do once the budgeting process starts is you send out Excel spreadsheets to various different department heads in order to collect some of the data. And then on a irregular basis, you get the Excel spreadsheet back, and that you need to somewhat consolidate those. This is just one of many processes around publishing houses, which is causing bad productivity. Another thing, for example, what we're often seeing is, because you have data silos, for example, you're using a financial management system, but you're also using a publishing system, for example. And most of the time what we see with different publishers is that the budget to real comparison of your title. So what did we budget for the title in the sense of costs, but also revenue, and the actual numbers, that those comparisons are mostly only done for the very important titles, but all the other titles are being left out because it's so tedious to get the data out of the financial system where you get the actual data, versus all the planning you're usually doing you have within your publishing system, right? In order to match those two different data sets, and because of the time you take to do so, it's only done for the very important titles, whereas all the other titles should be analyzed as well, because it is easy to do the analysis. It's just very tedious to collect the data. And that is something which will decrease the productivity, because you're running around collecting the data, but it's also getting you to the point of bad decision making, right? What we do want to do is to make sure that we can support our gut feeling. I think everybody on the call here, has some idea about how good that book will turn out, or how good a certain service we will be rendering will be received from your customers. But this gut feeling, first of all, it takes time to develop that. So when you have new people joining your company, they don't have a gut feeling like this, and you don't want to rely primarily on your gut feeling. So what we need to do there is to actually make sure we're looking at the data, and that the data is saying the same thing as our gut is saying. And then one of the other things is, if we talk about productivity, we all know this, data duplication. You have to enter data in one system, but you also have to do it in another system. Then you sometimes, if those systems are not connected to each other, you even have to send an email to your colleague and say, can you please enter this information into your system as well, because I don't have access to it. But even if the systems are connected to each other, data is being duplicated in a way that you take the customer information of your web shop and reproduce that customer information in your ERP platform, for example. So not going too much into details about discourage collaborative work. That's of course something where if it's really taking so much time to actually get all the data together, it's not really encouraging for the employees to do so, right? So there is a natural barrier of saying, oh, you know what, before we do this analysis and we all sit together here, and we have to dig on the data for 5 days to actually get some of the data out there. They're just basically saying it's probably not worth it, and let's not even do it. And what we refer to, the one version of the truth here at K&K, is really like, we need to, and I think everybody has seen that in the past, including myself as well. It's like, you have different analysis, and depending on what analysis you're opening up, you have different reports, and depending on what reports you're opening up, the numbers sometimes are not matching. right? Because this analysis is using this data set, another analysis is using another data set, and because data is being duplicated into the different systems, that could potentially mean that it's not updated in a frequent way, and therefore different analysis view may come up with different results, and that by itself is a really bad problem, not only concerning bad decision making, right, but it's really about the people will not trust your data and your analysis, and that is really the first nail in the coffin, because if they don't trust the data and your analysis, how can you explain to them that data is important? And that is something you will really have to work on to make sure that depending on what analysis are you opening, that it's at least connected to the same data and not linking to potentially old versions of the data. That is really bad. All right, so let's go to the next slide, and because I think that's something which we're all very interested in, is like, how do we bust those data silos? And that is something, again, it's not only having to do with technology here, and I think lots of challenges are around the change of culture. As we were talking about organizational structure before, it's the same thing here. We need to somewhat make everybody on the company aware of the fact that data is important. No matter what data it is, we need to think about a data first approach. Instead of going out and shopping for a new system and making sure that all my requirements are covered by that specific piece of software, maybe even a cloud solution which I just installed, or not even able to install, I just need to go to the website and be able to use it. But we need to make sure that people understand that they have to ask the question about data first, and then systems come later. So one of the things which is highly successful is to make sure that this topic is not only being addressed within the different departments, but make that a corporate goal, for example. So make make management aware of that data is important, and that the message needs to be transferred to everybody, to every department, to everybody within the department. Sometimes we see companies making, even depending on how you're set up, like MBOs or OKRs, if you set certain goals, soft goals or so for your employees, make data one of them. Make something like, make sure that the data of your department is available for the whole organization. At least the data which you're allowed to share, and of course not personal information and such, but making sure that those data can be accessed by others and could be analyzed. But nonetheless, it's what really helps in that case is always communication, right? We have to start talking about data better yesterday than today, but it's never too late to start. But you need to make your people aware of that. Even if they don't know what the data could turn into yet, it is still important to share it, because sometimes by analyzing the data you potentially thought is worthless, you find out very interesting things there and or specific patterns which help you to make better decision making. So if we make that a corporate goal, if we make that an important topic in the management, and if you communicate the benefits to the people, I'm not saying it will happen overnight, but it's at least planting the seed in everybody's brains in order to basically understand that, oh, wait a minute, management is talking about data, the head of the departments are talking about data. So I think that's something we should have on our radar, and to actually make sure that we look into those things as well. And then what I just did, right? Explain what the problem with data silos is, and explain them what would happen if we don't share our data with others, is that we don't have one version of the truth, and we don't have a holistic analysis. We're only looking at pieces of the business instead of the whole thing. And that is something which it's not easily done, but I think you could start with it tomorrow, even today, and go out and say, okay, let's put this as a important topic into the management, and let's see how we can start communicating to our different teams that that data is something we want to talk about, and we put it as an important topic, to everybody, into everybody's team, to basically say, we want to tackle this. We're not having a full-blown picture yet, but we will make this an important topic from now on going forward. And then there's two things: centralizing the data and integrate systems. It sounds almost like the same thing, but it's not. So centralizing data is all about, instead of just thinking features and functions, it's really about think about the data first. So where do we have our customer data? Oh, we have customer data in 3 different systems. Oh, okay, so let's make sure we centralize those data about those customers. But what about your data platform? As I said in the beginning, everybody's most certain when I say, are you a Windows or are you a Mac company? And they always like, oh yeah, definitely Windows or definitely Mac. But if you say, okay, what's your data platform? Like, where do you store all your data? They really don't know, because it's usually so many different systems and so many different databases and Excel spreadsheet. And I even see like FileMaker systems floating around, Access databases, you could even look at your Outlook email or Outlook contact list, right? Which is a data source, and sometimes it only exists within your Outlook system and nowhere else. And those are the things you have to tackle, right? So because there are data platforms where you can centralize or centrally store your data and have other systems accessing those specific data sets. And then, of course, from an integrated system perspective, I mean, that's nothing new, but you have to make sure that data is being shared between different systems. That by itself can be done easily by just having another interface. But I will go into a little bit more detail about how you can intelligently integrate those systems, because normal interfaces are already and always reproducing data. That means you always have to make sure that it's being reproduced in a correct way and it's being updated in a correct way as well. And that's actually very much complicated. And that is why interfaces itself it's a very stupid technology, but by having to make sure that you constantly update other systems and updating the data sets, this is the complicated part about it. And we're trying to tackle that in a couple minutes here. So let's talk about centralizing the data. And I think that's something, if we look at it from, let's say, customer data, right? There's various options on how to do that. Let me run you through that one. So what we're seeing nowadays, and why do we need to do this, right? On the left-hand side, you see, very basic traditional models. You have a product and you're trying to sell that product to as many customers as possible, potentially through various different channels. And your customer is basically purchasing the product one time, and then your customer is gone. But especially what we have seen throughout the pandemic in the last couple of years is really that this business model is more and more changing, because we're not focusing on single sales anymore, but we're focusing on multiple purchases, and that's something which we can only do if we start collecting data about our customers. Because if you think about, you may not all have subscription services up and running for your customers, but even if you think about you're selling them a book, and then of course you want to sell them the new book, or a new book. And in order to understand what your customers like and how you can enhance their experience with your organization, you will have to collect data. And so what we're seeing is that, specifically within, the subscription business, that doesn't mean like subscribing to a magazine or something like that. But if you think about books, maybe audiobooks, how can you make sure, like for example, I'm a big Audible fan. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, almost a book a week. And I do so because the service around that is so good, that because I'm getting all the books I'm interested in delivered to my phone. I don't need to search for it. I get suggestions, and to be honest, most of the suggestions I'm getting, they're actually pretty accurate, and I'm listening to things I thought I wouldn't like, but at the end it turns out that I like those things. And this is only able to do if we collect the data. So we are able to actually use those data sets we're generating and produce more revenue out of it, because people are actually okay with paying money for good content. One of the things I'm always so happy about when it comes to making the most use of from content, for example, the Financial Times. I have a subscription to the Financial Times, and a service they're offering, which you don't have to pay extra for, but to be honest, I would even pay extra for that, is they are aggregating the content, so they are making the articles shorter if you read those articles on an airport. So whenever I'm at an airport, and because that's usually where I don't have so much time, but I may have 5 minutes here before I need to jump on the next airplane. So they're aggregating their articles to a way shorter format to make sure that I still use the app even on the airport. And I think for those services, we need to understand our customers. And in order to understand our customers, we really need to collect data around it. And this is why I said in the beginning, make sure you start collecting data, even though if you don't know what you potentially want to do with the data, because you may see some patterns in there. All right, and how could we accomplish something like that? So how can we achieve that? So what we're trying to do here, I'm having a problem going to the next slide. There we go. So this looks very terrible, complicated. I'm trying to walk you through it with, without needing to be a techie here. On the left-hand side that's basically the different data points you see which are producing data nowadays. As I said in the beginning, data is really produced everywhere, and we need to make sure that we can connect through the different touch points where data is being connected so that we can consume the data. And once we're able to actually connect to those data sets, connect to the different touch points here, is what we need to make sure is because every system is producing a little bit of different data here. We need to make sure that we put all of this in a centralized data storage, and then we need to do the map and the matching. So some codes on system A are different than in system B and stuff like that, and we need to make sure that we are ingesting the data and basically map and match those data so that they're all talking the same language. And this is a little bit more of the complicated part, not in a way to technically complicated, but understanding your data. So you need to have people on the team who are familiar with the different systems which are producing those data sets, and to walk them through and to say, okay, how can we match those with other data from other systems? And then of course, trying to enrich and conflate the data by potentially using, and that's something which is available if you start to collect and centralize your data, by using AI and machine learning algorithms, for example. So what you want to do is, once you have all your data centralized, and by all data, I mean the important data, right? It's really not important to centralize everything, but for example, customers, it's a very, very good topic here, but also products and such. So once you have those data sets centralized, you can start putting artificial intelligence or machine learning on top of that, but even starting with BI analysis, right? Just simply nice looking dashboards, and of course you want to make sure that they not only look nice, but actually producing some kind of like valid insights. But even starting with those dashboards and analysis that people have access to, no matter from what departments they are, no matter from where they are accessing the system, that by itself could boost the decision-making process, because you're now looking at data and not only making decision based on your gut feeling. And then of course, once something is centralized, you can also put very much process automation on top of it. Every time a customer address is being added, I want to inform a specific group within the company about that, or something like that. Even though the customer data may come from different systems, but since we're centralized, and we can actually start doing some process automation there as well. And then of course, depending on what you find out on the analysis, either through BI or machine learning or something like that, you could then actually take some actions again with your customers in that scenario here. So you may want to send them a push notification to their mobile. You want to start communicating with them on social media, or sometimes it's necessary to give them a call and talk to them directly or something like that. But again, you can only do this if you start collecting and centralizing the data. So what we're essentially trying to do, focusing on the customer side of things here at the moment, is trying to actually create the golden record. So a unique record per customer where everything around this customer is being centralized. And that is how something like this could look. And it's just an example, but that's something we can create with our software as well, by making sure we're centralizing the data. We can actually see Patty Melendez, right? And we see, oh, what has she bought in her entirety over the web shop or other systems. Sometimes maybe even at a merchant store if we get the point of sale data correctly from there. We also see, what's her engagement score. It's on the lower left-hand side there. And we see that we have 36 activities with her. And talking about activities, that is something where we actually see, we have 19 emails. She opened up, or she did some activity on the app and stuff like that. And that is what we can generate if we're starting to centralize those data. And the good thing about that is, once we start collecting the data, we can start using artificial intelligence and machine learning. And don't be scared about it. It's nothing highly technical. What nowadays is possible with artificial intelligence is that the first problem is you need a lot of data. But once you have it, what you can do is you can use pre-built algorithms which help you, for example, to predict churn. So you don't need to do anything with that. You just need to actually give the data. You could see it as a black box. You put in data and you will get a result. And of course, you're able to tweak those black boxes as well to the extent that you wanted to train on your specific data. But that's for the beginning. It's definitely not necessary. There's pre-built models out there, not only from Microsoft, but also every other bigger cloud company, Amazon, and stuff like that, Salesforce. They're all having those pre-built black boxes, which you can put the data into, and you will get some analysis out there with very low money investment and very low time investment, and you don't need to be highly technical to actually do this. And that is something which we need to start using after we have centralized our data. And this is just an example of how a customer churn prediction could look like. Interestingly enough, I always think after so many years of being in the business, you see on the lower right-hand side here that one of the biggest impacts still, which are predicting the churn, is how long your customer has been subscribed to your services. The longer it is, the higher the chance is that that he or she will unsubscribe the service. I think it's so. From a real life perspective, yes, of course that's true, but now you can actually see that the data is being helpful to to underline your gut feeling about this, because of course the longer somebody is subscribed to it, so then of course there's the chance that that they will churn. But there's many other things which can be done out of the box, right? We just talked about the churn prediction, but what I actually, if we think about a little bit more positive, so what is the spending prediction? How much does our customer want to, or potentially will spend with us in the next year? Right? You can see this by loyalty value, revenue value, those type of things, but you want to make sure you can predict cross and upselling potentials, and that is probably that's basically the next steps, what's called NBA, so next best action. There are algorithms out there which can predict what you should be doing with your customer next. Should we contact them and asking them if they are happy with the services, or should we be contacting them trying to sell them a new product? Right, and this can be done based on the collected data you collected about your customer, and then again use a black box. You put the data into the black box, and it will help you. And to be honest, it's not perfect, right? Artificial intelligence also makes mistakes, same as human being makes mistakes. The good thing about artificial intelligence, it's way more efficient. and it's also quite precise, but it still also makes mistakes, so it's not 100% perfect. But at least you will be able for every of your customers, be supported by a system which can tell you that, oh, you know what, based on the historical data and the prediction we're doing, this probably is the next best action. And then also about concerning not only concerning the next best action, gotta work on that wording here, is the timing. So when should we be doing? So we know now, for example, okay, we should send them an email and asking them about how happy they are with our services. But should we just send it to them on Sunday? Should we send it to them on Monday, 8 a.m.? Should we send it to them through their lunch break? And that is something which needs to be timed very correctly, because if you send it at the wrong time, they probably not even going to look into your email. But if you do it at the right time with the right content, then there's a fair chance that they may open up this email and think, oh, you know what, let me actually give them some feedback because I'm actually happy with their services, or I'm not. And it's very important to understand what we should be doing and when we should be doing so. Which leads us to scoring. That is something which, depending, and I think everybody heard about it when we talk about marketing automation, that is always something where we're trying to estimate, is a specific customer, even if it's a customer we're not really familiar with in the sense of name and address, but even if they browse anonymously on our website, we can start to score them with different technologies, in the sense of, oh, I know this customer visited our website before and was browsing and maybe left some items in the basket and didn't finish the basket off. So based on those things and based on the action customers are taking on your different platforms, you can score them, and at some point, what we call sales ready. The more they have done on your website, for example, the more they have interacted through newsletters or opened the newsletters, clicked on the link, landed on the landing page and stuff like that. The more they do, the more score they will get. Or the lesser they do, the lesser the score will get. And at some point, the system can suggest, oh, you know what, we have reached a score now here where we think the customer is actually ready to purchase one of your products, and then you can decide, should we be calling this person, and so on and so forth. So those are just a couple of suggestions you could do once your data is centralized, and in how that could look like from a K&K perspective is basically what we're offering is a K&K platform. So we're not focusing on the different systems, but we're focusing on the platform itself first. To us, it is very important that you see, of course, editorial office, rights and royalties, but even financials, so all the accounting, distribution, production. So those are all things we're offering within our platform, and that's basically, you could look at it as like an app store, basically deciding, oh, I do want to have a royalty component in that application running, then you can basically subscribe to it, but you don't have to. So you can basically, like on your phone, pick a specific app. It's the same thing here. You can decide on what you want to have access to and what you don't want to have access to. And the good thing about this all the different apps we have within the platform is not that those apps are unique. I think you have another system where you can calculate royalties with, or something where you manage your titles within. And that's something we can offer as well. But what we are offering is that it's not only that the systems are integrated with each other, but they're sharing the same data model. Earlier, I was talking about interfaces is one thing. It's replicating data from one system into another system. And when we talk about intelligently connecting systems with each other, we're talking about that those systems are not replicating the data, but they are accessing the same data on a centralized layer. And in that case, you would see, oh, look at this. We have customers in our ERP, we have customers in our CRM system, we need customer data for our marketing automation, and all those different systems here are using the same set of the underlying data model. So the ERP system is using the customer data, which sits in the data model, instead of having its own set of data included into that. And the good thing about this platform in general is, and that's something I'm a big fan of, is really to make this open and available to everybody. So that just because I'm showing you K&K apps on the screen here now, that doesn't mean you can put other apps on top of that as well. So if you are running your Salesforce, if you're running your MailChimp and whatnot systems, right? Those data, those systems are producing, they can be tied into this data model as well, because it is an open data model. And you know, we can open it up to other systems out there, and that's what we basically do in a nutshell at K&K. Just put you a couple of facts and figures here. We are indeed a Microsoft shop, as you probably have guessed by now, and we're only focusing on the media and publishing industry, and have about 450 customers out there. And are basically doing businesses around the world, and with our platform solution. I hope that webinar was enjoyable for you. I hope I was able to at least put a little bit finger on some of the topics you probably already heard or not, and then it would be even better. But get things started and start thinking about a data first approach, instead of always only talking about various solutions and features and functionalities. And with that, I would leave it up for some questions if we do have some, Therese.
Thank you, Sebastian. Any questions? I don't see any currently. Anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask Sebastian, or comments that they'd like to make? Give people a little bit. Thank you. This a lot of information here, Sebastian. And I assume that if folks are more interested in getting into more detail about some of the how-tos, that you would be available to talking to folks, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, more than happy to.
Oh, very good.
I can already also provide the slide set if that's interesting to anybody, or the book as
that
well.
Would be great. If you want to send me the slides, then we will make them available at the website. For those of you who are here, the video of recording of this webinar will live at the ACP website under webinars, resources, webinars. Thank you, Patrick. Yes, to those slides. You got strong affirmation there, Sebastian. And we'll also provide a link there to the slides. You also will get a follow-up email with a link to the video as well. So that should all be available, the video at least, a little bit later today. I don't see any other questions or comments. So Sebastian, I think that is the end of our session today. Unless there's anything else that you'd like to offer. Otherwise, don't forget, Sebastian represents one of our associate members, K&K Software. You can always find their contact information at the ACP website. Just log in and then go to the members directory. If there is a quick question for you, Sebastian, does K&K Software produce ONIX files? That ONIX is a big issue with a lot of our members.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the integral pieces of our platform.
I bet if you work with data, it'd be hard to avoid ONIX.
Especially if you talk about data, right? So
yes. Especially with publishing and Amazon and thank you, everybody. It's been great to have you this morning. Thank you for coming. Please let other folks in your businesses and in your peer groups know that this webinar is available for viewing at their own pace. And thank you, Sebastian, for being here and representing K&K so well and sharing these insights with us. We really appreciate it a great deal.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for conducting those webinars.
Okay. And no, I don't want to show you my screen. So thank you very much, everybody. And that is the end of our webinar.